I'd like to get on with the program and give you a very fine background introduction for our next speaker, who we know you are going to like. And as you've heard other times, people have said you're going to like this next speaker. We have the benefit in this case of having the experience firsthand to seeing the crowd reaction to two of our Conference of Champions agents groups that Ed has addressed in the last couple of days. So we think you'll be excited by it and pleased by his participation in our program. Our guest speaker, his name is Ed Foreman, as you saw in the program. And if anyone can really top off the program that we've had during this week, Ed can be the person to do that. The title of his address is How to Have a Good Day Every Day, a subject that should have appeal to all of us here today. Ed Foreman lives the good life that he teaches. Maybe this is part of the reason why. He became a millionaire at age 26. And he was elected to Congress at the age of 28. In fact, Ed is the only person in this century to be elected to the United States Congress from two different states, the great state of Texas and New Mexico. He has enjoyed a very close working relationship with 5 different United States presidents and has served as presidential appointee in 2 national administrations. Ed was born on a farm in New Mexico. He has a civil engineering degree from New Mexico State University. He is an active civic leader who has built a financially successful business career in construction, transportation, and petroleum development. Named one of the 10 outstanding young men in America by the United States Jaycees in 1964. Ed has been a leader in executive development programs since 1960. As a president of Executive Development Systems of Dallas and a full-time management consultant, he conducts motivational and sales training seminars and regularly addresses convention groups throughout the country. A man of Mr. Enthusiasm style, he is rated America's #1 speaker in the art of successful daily living. He was a big hit at our Conference of Champions, as I said. Please give him a rousing all-state welcome. Ed?
Thank you. Thank you, Don. You done good. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. Well, thank you, Don. That's a great introduction. I know how some of you are feeling right now. You're thinking, if this guy's been elected to the United States Congress from 2 different states, done all this politicking with 5 different presidents and all this business, I guess we're going to be exposed to a bunch of politics here today, are we? No, I've gone straight and I work for a living now. I want to share some things with you. If you'll listen to them and you'll apply them in your life, better than that, if you'll start to work with them here and now today, I guarantee you, you're going to feel better about yourself and you will do better in life. And you know, if any of you have heard something I'm going to say, and I know we have several participants who were here at the other 2 days' meetings, and if you already heard what I'm going to say, don't stop me. Number 1, I enjoy telling what I'm going to tell here today. And number 2, I need it as bad as anybody here in the room. So the more we talk about this, the more fun. And it's good to see the ladies participating. Thank you for having a break, coming down here and joining us here today. And I've been impressed. I've been singularly impressed with this whole convention, to see the husband and wife teams that have been participating together in this program, and a company that encourages family overall support the way they do here. That's fabulous. Thank you. You know, whenever I see the husband and wife team participating in a meeting like this, I can't help but be reminded of a situation that my good friend Congressman John Buchanan used to tell about. John Buchanan's from Birmingham, Alabama. And John, before being elected to the United States Congress, was a minister. And for about 2 or 3 years, he traveled as an evangelist through about 3 or 4 southern states. And John said many times when he was going into an area to hold a revival meeting, he'd try to get in a day or 2 or 3 early to get around, visit with the citizenry, remind them to support the work of God and to do the work of the church and so forth, and frankly, to kind of muster up a crowd so he wouldn't be disappointed whenever he was putting on a revival meeting. And he said he was going into one of these little rural communities one day, in a southern community, driving down the road, saw this farmer out plowing. And he just stopped his car, and without any introduction, how do you do whatsoever, bounced right out across the turn road, right up to the farmer, and he said to him, he said, "I say there, brother," he said, "are you a member of the Christian family?" And the farmer looked at him kind of puzzled, and he said, "Well, no," he said, "as a matter of fact, I ain't." He said, "The Christian family lives about 2.5 miles down the road on the left." He said, no, no, brother. He said, I mean, are you lost? He said, well, no, I don't reckon you'd say I'm lost. He said, I've been right here on this same farm for over 25 years. He said, no, no, brother. He said, I mean, are you ready for the judgment day? Well, he said, I don't know. He said, when's it going to be? He said, well, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be any time. And he said, well, when you do find out what day it's going to be, I wish you would let me know, because my wife will likely want to go both days. And, you know, as I see this group here and as I see this exciting, enjoyable, enthusiastic participation, I know it's been a great meeting all 4 days or ever how many days you have been here. It's been exciting every day. You got a good attitude. I like the winning attitude that I see through this whole meeting. Everybody's excited, and when you get excited, you get other people excited. You see, it's your attitude, it's how you feel about yourself that helps you to be the winner that you are and to set the example for those that you lead. Whenever I think about this, I'm reminded of a situation that happened to me some time ago. I'd been invited to address the annual Chamber of Commerce meeting in Silver City, New Mexico. It's a copper mining town about 120 miles north of El Paso, up in the mountains there in New Mexico. And I got up there that evening, had about 450, 500 people in the old Murray Hotel up there. Big, long head table, and so they were all in, you know, it's a big festive, it's the big blowout of the season up there in Silver City. And I turned to the fellow sitting next to me, and I said, well, tell me, sir, I said, how are things going with you? He said, oh, Mr. Foreman said, ain't you heard about strike? I said, what strike? He said, Phelps Dodge and Kennecott, two big copper companies up here, both out on strike. And he said, let me tell you something, Mr. Foreman. He said, when those two companies go out on strike, he said, business in this community is bad. Now, he said, I happen to be in real estate business. But he said it wouldn't matter if I was in the insurance business, automobile business, clothing business, grocery business, or anything else. He said, when those two companies go out on strike, business in this community is bad. He said, I haven't sold a house in 6 weeks, and I'll tell you something else. If this strike continues for another 4 weeks, I'm going to be on the verge of bankruptcy. I never seen things so bad before in my life. Well, I'd never heard anybody so enthusiastically negative before in my life. This guy acted like he was weaned on a dill pickle. You know, I think when he got up in the morning, instead of saying, good morning, God, I think he said, good God, it's morning. You know the type I'm talking about. Well, I was sorry. I asked him how he felt. I was supposed to bring these people a message of hope and encouragement and enthusiasm. Well, you can imagine how I felt. In just a little while, he turned and started talking to the fellow on his right. Immediately took advantage of the situation, turned and started talking to a little lady on my left. Must have been about 45, 50 years old. I said to her, I said, well, ma'am, I said, how are things with you? She said, oh, Mr. Foreman, ain't you heard about the strike? And I thought, oh my gosh, Ed, you teach people to communicate and you done messed up twice in the same 5 minutes. But she said, my business is terrific. And I said, what? I said, what kind of business you in, lady? She said, I'm in the real estate business. I said, the real estate business? I said, how do you explain it? She said, let me tell you something, Mr. Foreman. She said, these young folks that work for Phelps Dodge and Kennecott believe in those two strong corporations. She said, they believe in the American free enterprise system. She said most of them don't want to be off on strike anyhow. And they recognize that very shortly they're going to be going back to work, and when they do, they're going to be earning increased fringe benefits. And she said a lot of those young couples are taking advantage of this time off for the husband and wife to shop together for the dream home of their choice. She said, will you believe that just yesterday, with one young couple, I spent 2 hours showing them one house, that they examined every square inch of that house from the attic down to the basement and bought it? She said, Mr. Foreman, I've sold more houses in the last 6 weeks than I'd sold in the previous 6 months. And she said, I'll tell you something else. She said, if this strike will just continue for 4 more weeks, she said, I'll get rich. I won't have to work for a year. So help me God, that same conversation took place at the same head table, the same night, in the same community. Let me ask you something. What was the difference between these two people? What was it? It was their attitude, exactly. It wasn't what they were selling. It wasn't where they lived. It wasn't their. It was their individual, personal. And look at it this way: they're both in the same business in the same community. They both belong to the multiple listing service. You know what that means? They had identically the same houses to sell the same prospects. One's getting rich and the other's going broke, simply because of the way they saw the situation. Now that's what I'm saying to you. is that when you get excited about what you have to help other people enjoy a greater peace of mind and a greater excitement out of life, when you recognize that what you have is what they need and you're the person they need to get it from, then you're getting the right attitude and you're going to make things happen. And that's what this whole conference has impressed me with, is the good, wholesome, positive, excited attitude that you have. Sometimes people say something to me about this little bumblebee tie tack that I wear. This little bumblebee is the emblem of the company that I represent, Executive Development Systems of Dallas. You know, according to recognized aeronautical facts, because of the size and weight of his body in proportion to his little bitty wingspan area, the bumblebee cannot fly. But the bumblebee doesn't know that. And so he goes ahead and flies anyhow. Now what we do is we teach people who think they're not supposed to be happy and healthy and successful by developing the right, proper mental attitude and coupling that with specific identifiable purpose in their life, they can have, be, or do what they want to. We conduct a 3-day executive development training program in the hill country of Texas at a little place called Kerrville, Texas. Every other weekend we have people from throughout the United States, 17 foreign countries, 25 of the Fortune 500 companies who are represented in that class. They come in for 3 days and nights. We talk about how to have one good, happy, enjoyable, productive, successful day, one day at a time. And people say to me, you mean you spend 3 days on how to have one good day? That's right, because if you can learn the formula to have one good, happy, enjoyable, productive, successful day, and you do that 7 days in a row, what have you had? You've had a good, that's not too hard a question, is it? You've had a good week. Now, if you do that 52 times in a row, what have you had? You've had a good year. You notice the questions get harder as I go along, and I'm going to be tested. That's right, you've had a good year. Now, you do that over and over and over and over, you have a happy, enjoyable, successful life. But by actual survey, the majority of the people have one uptight, frustrating, by golly, get out there and deal with those dummies today type day. And they do it 7 days in a row, and they say, boy, it's been a rough week. Then they do that 52 times in a row, and they say, boy, life is dull and boring. We find that life is dull and boring primarily to dull, boring people. Life is exciting and enjoyable and successful to exciting, enjoyable, successful people. One of the greatest tragedies of life is the little boy, the little girl that says, someday when we get to be a big boy, get to be a big girl, then we're going to get married, we're going to move into that new home, and boy, we're going to be happy, and we're going to do this and this and this. And then when that happens, what do they say? Well, one of our children get here and get in school, we get this thing furnished like we want to and get that pool in the backyard, get everything all fixed up, boy, then we're going to be happy and we're going to have a good time. And then when that happens, what do they say? Well, whenever the children get out of school and get on their own, you know, and we get this place paid off, boy, then we're going to be happy and we're going to do this and this and this and this. And then when that happens, what do they say? Well, when we retire, going to get that motor home, going to travel across this great country, and we're going to have an exciting time. Going to do all those things we've been wanting to do but never had time to do. And then one sad day on the way to the grave, they say, my gosh, I forgot to enjoy life. I forgot to live life while it was here. The most tragic and sad fact of life is going all the way through and failing to enjoy here and now today. So what I'm going to share with you right here and now today is the highlights of the 3-day Executive Development Successful Life Course program, in which we share with people how to live one good, happy, enjoyable, productive, successful day, one day at a time. Whenever I talk about this, I'm reminded of a situation that happened in one of our classes back some time ago. We had an outstanding, dynamic gentleman by the name of Horace Ziegler, Judge Ziegler, from down Yazoo City, Mississippi. He's a brother to Zig Ziglar, the outstanding motivational trainer and speaker from Dallas. A very outstanding individual. I see several of you have heard him, and if you ever hear Zig, you'll never forget him. He's a dynamic individual. Anyhow, his brother was in the program. In fact, I'm happy to say Zig's one of our good graduates. I think that boy's done right good. But let me tell you about this. His brother was in this class, and he said, you know, Ed, whenever you talk about that good day business, he said, I'm reminded of a situation that happened to me when I was a little bitty boy. I said, bounce up here, Judge, and share it. He said, we'll give you a little bit of a background. He said, whenever I was 2 years old, my daddy died, and my mama was left there at home on a farm with 12 kids to raise. And I'll never forget a situation. I was the youngest of those 12 children. I'll never forget a situation that happened whenever I was 5 years old. Every morning about 5 o'clock, my mama would come in out of the room where I was asleep. She'd come up there to that little bunk. She'd put her hand on my shoulder and she'd say, "Son, get up. We're going to have a good time today." I'd jump up out of that little bunk and I'd go running in there in the kitchen. And I'd sit down on a little 3-legged milk stool by the wood cook stove where Mama was fixing breakfast. She'd throw a quilt around my shoulders, pour me about a half cup of coffee, about half milk. I'd sit there and sip that coffee while Mama was fixing breakfast, and the other children would be out doing the chores, milking the cows, feeding the hogs, doing things that need to be done. They'd all come back in, we'd have breakfast together, and then they'd take on off to school. But because I was too young to go to school, I'd stay there and help Mama do the work that needed to be done on the farm. Now, this particular time I'm thinking about, we were picking turnip greens. I don't know if any of y'all ever picked turnip greens before or not, but that's along in the wintertime of the year when it's real cold, and we'd been down there and we'd picked several baskets of those turnip greens. We brought them back up there to the house, and out there behind the house we had this big old long wooden bench. Had 3 big old wash tubs filled with water where we'd wash those turnip greens. Well, I went out there that morning to wash those turnip greens, and it was a layer of ice about 1 inch thick frozen over the top of each one of those tubs. I got me an old axe handle, and I went along there and broke the ice on top of each tub. I'd get me a big old double handful of those turnip greens, and I'd dunk them down there in that first tub, and I'd wash them around, you know, and then dunk them over in that second tub, and then rinse them off in that third tub. That old Mississippi soil is hard to get off them turnip greens. I'd pile them over on the porch, and Mama would tie them into bundles, and we'd put them into cardboard boxes, take them down to the general store, and swap them for sugar and flour and stuff we didn't raise there at home on the farm. Well, this particular morning, I was washing those turnip greens, and I looked down there at my hands, and it just seemed like a 5-year-old's hands are just so small, and my fingers were just so cold that they just turned numb. And I turned to my mother and I said, "Mama, I'm not having a good time today." And I just hurt all over, just from the tip of my toes to the top of my head. I just black and blue and cold and hurt. And that night, whenever I went to bed, I was still miserable. Next morning, 5 o'clock, just like she always did, Mama come in there, she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, son, get up. We're going to have a good time today." I just rolled over and I pulled that quilt over my head and I said, no, I ain't going to get up. It's going to be a bad day. Well, she just turned around, went on back in the kitchen, and started fixing breakfast. The other children got up, did the chores, came in, had breakfast, went on to school. Mother went on out to work. About 10 o'clock, I heard her in there in the kitchen. I got up, came walking in. She looked at me. She said, "What are you doing in here?" I said, "Well, I got up to have some breakfast, help you do the work around here." And she said, "Oh, no. No, son," she said, "don't you remember? You made the decision this morning that it was going to be a bad day." And she says, "Son, it's going to be a bad day all day long." She took me right back in there and put me right back in that bunk. Now, you'd think any mama would let her little boy up to have lunch. But bless that dear mother's disciplined heart of mine, I stayed right there in that bunk right through lunch. I didn't even get to get up whenever the other kids came home from school. I didn't even get to get up for supper. It was the longest, most miserable, bad day I'd ever spent in my young life. Next morning, 5 o'clock, just like she always did, Mama come in there, she put her hand on my shoulder, and she says, Son, get up. We're going to have a good time today." I bounced up out of bed and I went running in there. I sat down on that little 3-legged milk stool. Mama threw that quilt around my shoulders and I started sipping that coffee, and right then and there I learned a lesson I've never ever forgotten. And that's this, that you and you alone make a decision every single day as to whether you're going to have a good day or a bad day. It's not that individual that may unthinkingly pull out in front of you on the way to work that decides whether you're going to have a good day or a bad day. It's not that irate, upset spouse or son or daughter or client that decides whether you're going to have a good day or a bad day unless you let them. The greatest power that you have is the power to choose every single day as to whether you're going to have a good day or a bad day. See, remember this, if you don't remember anything else I say, no one can make you angry unless you let them. No one can upset you unless you let them. But you and I both know people, don't we, that regularly go around letting uncontrollable circumstances determine whether they're going to have a good day or a bad day. You know people who get up and they go out and look outside and they say, "Oh, it's raining, it's going to be a bad day." And there's no way they have any control over it. They let the weather control their attitude. You and I both know people that can be taken off to work, have a little fender bender on the way to work, and look at my new car, all scratched up. They'll complain about it all day long, won't they? Some of them will gripe about it for a week, won't they? And then you know people who can roll their car over on the way to work. I mean, roll it over 3 times. Total it out. And get out in one piece and say, boy, ain't I lucky. The good Lord must have been riding with me. You see, it's not what happens to you that's so important as your reaction to what happens to you. It's your reaction to every little thing that happens in life. You plant the seed of a positive, happy, expectant thought. You get a positive, expectant action therefrom. It's impossible to think a thought and not have an immediate action therefrom. For instance, if you're thinking a happy, pleasant thought, what's the action immediately therefrom? You got a smile on your face, exactly. You're thinking uptight, frustrated, you got that scowl on your face. Now you do that 30 days in a row. Whatever it is, any action you repeat 30 days in a row, what happens? You develop a habit, that's right. And the habits then begin to build the character that we become. That's the exciting lesson that I talk and I share with you as we go into this, is that the thoughts that we think become actions. The actions develop habits. And the habits then build the character that we become. And you may be saying in here, well, right now, now come on, Ed. You're talking to the winners. You're talking to the leaders. We're the one that keep the old apple cart up and going around the track. You don't need me. You're preaching to the choir. We're the positive characters of this organization. Let me run a little test on you here right now. Just supposing you're taking off to the office. You got just enough time to get there. You got one of the biggest, most important potential clients that you ever had. You got an exact meeting time. You got just enough time to get there. And just before you get there, a train pulls across the road in front of you. Are you the type that says, oh, damn, that makes me mad? If you are, you have learned to react negatively to those things over which you have no control. And yet, which a fit isn't going to help. For instance, is it going to make the train move any faster to throw a fit? It's not going to help it at all, is it? Now, what does it do whenever you say, ooh, that makes me mad? It increases your blood temperature, your blood pressure, and it starts the drip, drip, drip of the acid that starts the formation of ulcers. We have 4 medical doctors on our staff who say that any time you say, ooh, that makes me mad, up goes your blood pressure, up goes your blood temperature, and down goes your life expectancy. In fact, people who continually say, ooh, that makes my red, use more preparation H than anybody else. Because consciously, we are subconsciously programming ourselves for a defective part of our anatomy. And therefore, we begin to have difficulties. So what do you do under this kind of a circumstance? Here, what you do. You've got at least 3 possible alternatives. You say, hey, I know a shorter, faster way anyhow. Now, if you know a shorter, faster way, then you take that shorter, faster way. If you don't know a shorter, faster way, what you do is you say, that's all right, I'll use this time to plan my day specifically so I can get more done in less time. And so you take out a pad and a pencil, and you're not going to be interrupted by the telephone or anybody walking in on you right there in your own little private cubicle. So you work out your schedule. Now, if you're already so well organized, you have your day planned. You say, hey, this is a good time for me to just relax and let go and take a little mind-control relaxation. So you just reach down there, turn off the ignition, lean back in the seat of your car, and just relax from the tip of your toes to the top of your head and take a mind-control relaxation, letting go of all anxiety, frustration, and worry, and just replenishing yourself with energy. And people say, well, suppose you go to sleep. The person behind you will always be thoughtful enough to awaken you when the train moves and you can move on. Now, what we're talking about here is that it is impossible. It is impossible for you to think a thought that does not immediately become an action. Anytime we are finding out, anytime any thought of illness begins to come about, we begin to secrete the hormones into our body that begins to accelerate to bring about them. Anytime we think about health, anytime we think about good feeling, then we begin to program ourselves for that good feeling. Just to show you right now for your own, I think you learn better from example than anything else. For you to appreciate more fully what I'm talking about, let me ask you all to just go through a little imaginary game with me, and it's a great thing you can share with some of your associates back home when you get back. Everybody just reach in your refrigerator right now and hold a lemon in your hand. Everybody get a lemon and hold it in your hand. Let's just make this as real as we possibly can. Imagine All right, now look down there at that lemon in your hand. Come on, get a lemon in your hand there. I'm talking to everybody here. This ain't show and tell. All right, now squeeze that lemon. Feel the firmness of it? All right, now see that yellow waxy peeling? See the two little green pointy ends there? All right, now bring that lemon up to your nose and smell it. Smell that citrusy smell? All right, now put that lemon back down on the table. All right, now cut that lemon half in two. Okay? Now pick up half of that lemon and look at it. See that center there? Now see the juice running down over the peeling? All right, now bring that half lemon up to your nose and smell of it. Smell much sharper now, doesn't it? All right, now bite into it. Your mouth filled with saliva, didn't it? I noticed 8 or 10 of you there nearly got the lockjaw on that one, didn't you? See, now all that was a thought. But when you thought the thought of biting into that lemon, what happened? In came the saliva to wash away the lemon juice. Now that same thing happens whenever you think, hey, I know we're going to make this one. We then begin to secrete hormones into our bloodstream to give us that winner's expectancy performance. And when you do that, then you perform better and things begin to flow your way. That's the exciting thing that we're talking about, is that we become the character of the thought. Now the exciting thing here is that if you don't like the character you are, you say, hey, I would like to be a little bit more positive. What you do is you begin to upgrade your thoughts, and that's precisely what I'm going to be sharing with you and showing you here today. If you think right now, you can think about people that you work with, and you can think of happy, enthusiastic, positive characters. I mean, they're just a kind of an individual. No matter what the weather is, they say, boy, it's a good day today. No matter what the job to be done is, they say, well, it may not be our responsibility, but by God, we'll do it better than it's ever been done before. Now, if you'll think for just a moment, you can think of an individual that's 180 degrees away from that person. No matter what the weather is, they grind about it. If the wind's blowing, they grind. If the wind ain't blowing, they say, sure, it's hot and muggy around here when the wind ain't blowing in. No matter what the job to be done is, they say, why do we have to do it? That's the claims department. Why can't they do it, you know? You're thinking right now, he's talking about old George, aren't you? You're thinking of somebody you're easy to think of, because there's more of those than there were the first time. Now, as you think about those two types of individuals, which one would you rather work around on a regular basis? The uptight, frustrated one, or the happy, enthusiastic one? Yeah, that's an easy question. The happy, enthusiastic one. Why would you rather work around the happy, positive, enthusiastic person? That's right. It's contagious. It's catching. You begin to feel that way too, don't you? Now, let me ask you a more difficult question. Which type individual are you the majority of the time? Now, let me ask you even a harder one, and you don't have to answer this one out loud. I can tell negative answers by the way you squirm in your chairs. How would you like to have to work for yourself? I asked that question day before yesterday, and the guy said, I'd quit before I'd do that. How would you like to be married to yourself? Now, that's bringing it right close to home, isn't it? Now, what I'm saying here is that life is too short to be a sorehead. Life is too short to be a griper and a complainer and always looking for the bad things. Supposing you only had 7 days left to live, you'd probably be a little happier and a little more loving and a little bit more enthusiastic than you've been being. Just start pretending that today is the most important day of my life, and I'm going to make it a good day. And when you make today a good day and you multiply it over and over, but a lot of people say, well, Ed, you know, that's a good philosophy and you can go around and teach it and preach it, but you don't understand. We're out there in the real business world. We're out there facing these people every day. We got all these, I'll never forget a situation that happened to me not too long ago. I was in a barber shop where I trade, and went in there and the barber said, there's no boy in here the other day that used to know you when you was in the oil business out in the middle of Odessa. And I said, oh, and he said, yeah. He said, Ed Foreman trades in here, doesn't he? And he said, yeah, as a matter of fact, he does. He said, you know, I know Ed Foreman. And he said, I think Ed Foreman is a phony. And my barber looked at him kind of puzzled. He said, a phony? He said, why do you think Ed Foreman's a phony? He said, any guy that's involved in as many business activities as Ed Foreman is, that goes around with a smile on his face, acting like he's happy in these times of inflation and high interest rates, that every time you ask him how he feels, he responds with terrific, has either got to be stupid or he's a phony. Now, he said, I don't think Foreman's stupid. I just think he's flat phony. And my barber said, well, now, wait a minute. He said, let's take a look at this. He says, just supposing that Ed went around the way you're talking about. Supposing whenever he went in to talk to his banker, he said, 19% interest rate? Well, that's highway robbery. I don't know how I'm going to pay that loan back, much less 19% interest. My God, I never saw anything like it. How do you think it would feel if he talked to his clients and said, oh boy, our business is bad. I mean, this is the roughest I've ever seen times before. He said, do you think that'd help Ed Foreman's success? Do you think he would sell more, do more, and build more? He said, well, I never thought about it that way. Now, that's what I'm talking about. So many people at this meeting have said to me, boy, I wish the agents back home felt like I do and felt like you talk. Now, the best way to get them to do that is to do what? Is to live the example. When you live the example, they say, by golly, you know, he or she knows something, they're feeling good, by golly, I must not be thinking right, and I'm going to start acting that way too. And I know how some of you feel. You say, well, what about when you run into those real tough situations? I got to tell you a funny thing happened to me the other day. I always try to get my income tax in early. And on April the 14th, my accountant came in, and we were going over the final well, we still had better than 24 hours to get it done. And I didn't know what the rush was because I was going to be in town the next day anyhow. But he came in, and he had a very serious look on his face, and he said, boy, he said, I got some bad news for you. And I said, well, you got any good news? He said, yeah, I got some good news. I said, well, for goodness sakes, give me the good news first. He said, well, Ed, he said, this past year has been a good year for you. He said, it's been the best year you ever had. He said, in ready-mix concrete and sand and gravel business, the most profitable year you've ever experienced. He said, in the building business, he said, it's the best year yet. He said, insofar as your speaking business is concerned, most profitable year. In the seminar business, he said, you finally broke across point, and that was a profitable year. He said, you know, we put you into the oil and gas drilling and development business for a tax shelter, but he said we hit more good ones than we did bad ones, and he said we've showed a positive cash flow in that, and we've got a profit on that. But he said the bad news is you got a whopping tax bill to pay. And I said, well, that's good. And he said, what do you mean that's good? And I said, I'd far rather be concerned with coming up with the money to pay a whopping tax bill and to try to cover an operating business deficit. But I said, if you think last year was good, you ain't seen nothing yet. I said, we already got leases signed for warehouses and buildings we haven't even built yet, which means the ready-mix concrete business is going to be good if we don't do anything but supply ready-mix concrete, sand and gravel to our own operations. And insofar as the oil and gas business is concerned, we've got 6 prospects that are better than the best producer that we drilled last year. In speaking, we're now turning down 2 speaking invitations for every one that we take. In the seminar business, we have already better than 2/3 filled every seminar that we're going to hold for the next 12 months. He said, man, that is terrific. He said, I never saw anything like it. But he said, what about the recession? I said, we decided not to participate. That's the thing I'm talking to you about. Is that you make that decision. Y'all are a good group, and I like a group that gets excited and turned on. It makes, anytime you got a group that gets excited and turned on, it's just like a customer gets excited, you get excited, don't you? I share things we hadn't even intended to share with you. But I'm reminded, you know, the important thing here is that you really are the barometer. You are the one that sets the pace in your community. You are the lead person that decides whether that community is going to be alive and vibrant, whether business is going to be good or whether it's going to be bad. You know, whenever I talk about this, I'm reminded of a good story that my friend Paul Harvey shared back some time ago. You may have heard it. If you have, don't stop me. It's a good story in him. We ought to all hear it again. He was telling about the young artist that had just received a commissioning to paint a portrait of a local builder. And he was so excited, feeling so good. It was the first major commissioning that he'd ever received. And so he went down to this little sidewalk cafe, all turned on. He bought a bottle of wine, and he was drinking that wine, celebrating the commissioning that he had received to paint this portrait. And while he was sitting there, drinking the wine, he looked over in his chair about 10 foot away, and there was a newspaper laying there with the headlines face up. It said, "Hard times are coming." And the more he looked at it, the more he thought about it, the more uptight, the more frustrated, the more worried he became. And so the restaurant owner came by in a moment. He said, shall I get you another bottle of wine or maybe some crumpets? He said, no. He said, bring my check. I must go. He said, is something wrong? He said, hard times are coming, and it's no time for me to be frivolously spending my time sitting here drinking wine. He said, I got to go get to work. So he left, and the restaurant owner got to thinking about it. Hard times are coming. And the more he thought about it, the more uptight, the more frustrated he became. And so he went over and picked up the phone. He called his wife and he said, sweetheart, he said, you know that new dress that you've ordered for the annual Chamber of Commerce banquet? He said, that's an awfully expensive undertaking for once or twice a year wearing. And he said, I understand hard times are coming. And he said, maybe if you could call them, maybe we could put that off a year, maybe cancel it altogether. She said, well, all right. So she went to the phone, she picked it up, she called this local dress shop. She said, I certainly hate to call you about this. I know you've measured me up for that beautiful new dress. You've ordered material, but my husband, the restaurant owner, says that hard times are coming, and we need to pull in our purse strings, need to be a little bit more frugal, and I'm going to have to put off at least a year and maybe cancel altogether the order on that beautiful new dress that you're making up for me. And they said, well, I certainly hate to hear it, but we understand. And so the dress shop owner got to thinking about it, and the more he thought about it, the more uptight, the more frustrated, the more anxious he became. And so he went over and picked up the phone, and he called his local builder. And he said, I certainly hate to call you about this, but he said, I understand that hard times are coming. And he said, you know those plans we've been going over to double the size of my dress shop? He said, this is a terrible time for me to be taking on that type of obligation. And he said, I'm going to have to cancel those plans for you to add on to my dress shop. Well, some of you are already way ahead of it. The builder got to thinking about it. He went over, picked up the phone, and called this young artist. And he said, I understand hard times are coming. And he said, this is no time for me to be frivolously spending my money to have a commissioning for a portrait to be painted. And he said, I'm going to have to cancel that commissioning that I gave you to paint my portrait. And so the young artist, in desperation and sorrow, went down to the little sidewalk cafe to drown his sorrows in a bottle of wine. And there he was, sitting there drinking the wine, and he looked over in his chair about 10 foot away. And there was this newspaper with the headlines face up. It said, hard times are coming. He walked over, and he picked it up, and he examined it very closely. And the date line was 10 years old. They had laid the paper there from where they had been unpacking dishes in the restaurant. And yet the headline that it conveyed had infected the entire thinking of the leadership of that community. And they were preparing for and guaranteeing that hard times were on the way. That's what I say about you. You see, when you are dynamic and enthusiastic and alive and vibrant, that enthusiasm rubs off on every person you're around. Now, I'm just a business person, just as you are. I'm just sharing with you, but I'll tell you one thing. You're going to go out of here feeling better today than when you came in here. I know, I'm going to go out of here feeling better because we have shared. And what have we shared? We have shared some enthusiasm that I picked up by the implementation of the principles that I'm talking to you about right here. Let me ask you a very personal thing right here, right now. How many of you in this room today have a tendency to worry once in a while? Would you raise your hands? All right, most of you raised your hand. If you didn't raise your hand on that, and you probably didn't understand the question. Now, if there were a simple, easy to follow little method that would help you recognize what worry is and help you overcome this troublesome pestilence for the rest of your life, you'd probably want to know how to do it, wouldn't you? Say yes. Yes. All right, let me tell you what worry is. Worry is nothing more or less than negative goal setting. I'll put it another way. Worry is nothing more or less than vividly thinking about what you don't want to happen. It's the misuse of your imagination. You see, worry is thinking, oh, I bet we can't pay off that note at the bank. Or if you're a banker, thinking, oh, I bet they can't pay off that loan. I made them. Worry is thinking, oh, I bet little Johnny or Mary flunk out of school. And what happens, it begins to knot up your gut, doesn't it? It begins to increase your blood pressure and your blood temperature, and it starts the shortening of your life. And many times people say, well, if there's anything that old boy knows, he knows what worry is. All right, now having defined what worry is, projecting a negative outcome, or thinking negatively about things that already passed and over which you have no control. Let me ask you to play a little game with me right now. Everybody just close your eyes and think about, everybody just close your eyes right now, and think about your most outstanding number one desire, your number one goal in life. Maybe it's to be in that beautiful new home in the country with that wooded acreage all around there. Maybe it's to have that cabin in the mountains or that cottage on the lake. Maybe it's to see little Johnny or Mary graduate from school and get into business on their own. Maybe it's to see you get your business operation in such shape that you can continue to grow and to make that thing prosper and to be among the winners with which you're associated here today, even more effectively than you're doing now. Whatever your number one goal, your number one desire specifically may be, Right now, think about it with your eyes closed and vividly imagine, actually see in your imagination yourself enjoying the fulfillment of the realization of the accomplishment of that goal. Smell the smells. Hear the sounds. Feel the feelings. Isn't that a wonderful feeling that you feel right now? There's a tingling goes up your spine as you just see yourself enjoying the fulfillment of the realization of that goal. You can all open your eyes right now. You know, if you could be up here in front and you'd look around this group, you know what you'd see? That's right, you'd see a lot of great big smiles. In fact, usually folks laugh right out loud during that exercise. Now, you know what that feeling is called that you had just now when you were thinking about what you wanted to happen? You know what that's called? That's called happiness. You see, when you think about what you want to happen, you feel happy right now, don't you? Now, let me ask you something. John, do you do your job better when you're happy? Of course you do. Do you feel healthier, Tom, when you're happy? Why, of course you do. Don, do you get along better with your wife, your family members, and associates whenever you're happy? Why, of course you do. See, all of those are easy questions to answer in the affirmative. Yes, whenever you feel good, whenever you're happy, everything flows better today, and therefore today is a good day. When you're thinking about what you want to happen, you feel happy, and therefore you perform better today. But let me tell you the second more important benefit. When you think about what you want to happen, you are projecting upon the screen of your subconscious mind a vivid image of what you want to happen. And we are just like target-guided missiles. We have within us the subconscious that begins to program us toward the realization of that we hold in the target of our subconscious mind. So that's why the happy, enthusiastic, vibrant person says, boy, I just know we're going to get this contract, and when we do, watch our flame. You see them a year later and they say, we got 3 that was better than that, look where we're going now. You see that individual says, I bet we lose our shirts on this one. They've always had high claims anyhow, and you know how we have to cut prices to get it. You see them a year later and they say, oh, I don't even work over there anymore. I'm pumping gas at the corner service station down here in the day and working the docks at night. Why? Because what you hold in your subconscious mind, what you vividly image and hold in your mind begins to become the reality. When you see your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined happening and an actual happening. It's like a computer, and if any of you know anything about computers, you know what GIGO means. What does GIGO mean? That's right, garbage in, garbage out, good in, good out. So what you put in there begins to program you toward. If I were to ask you the question right now, what do you think is the most powerful? Your imagination or your willpower? Your imagination must be 10, maybe 20 times as powerful as your willpower. What you think, I don't care what your willpower is, what you think about day in and day out, how you see yourself is where you're going to be. Let me give you a little example of it. Supposing I were to take a 4-inch thick timber, 12 inches wide, 20 foot long, and put it right down here on the floor, right here. Put a $100 bill right down there, and I'd say to you, Laurie, come up here and walk from one end of this 4 by 12, 20 foot long, down to the other end, and you can have that $100 bill. Could you do that all right? Isn't any doubt in that girl's mind about that? Look at that smile on her face. She said, you just try me out. In fact, can't you see her? She'd bounce right up here. She'd go right down that 4 by 12, pick up that $100 bill, and the likelihood is she'd come right back down here, do a little curtsy, and go all the way back. She'd cross it twice, wouldn't she? Now, supposing, Laurie, I took that same 4 by 12, 20 foot long, put it up here between 2 20-story buildings. Put one end on this building, one end on this building. Put the $100 bill over here, and I said to you, Laurie, walk from one end of the 4 by 12 over to the other. Are you likely to do it? Any doubt in your mind you wouldn't do it. Now, why wouldn't you do it, Laurie? Yeah. You'd see yourself falling, wouldn't you? And what's likely to happen to her? Ah, it's bad, isn't it? She would vividly see herself falling. And that's exactly what would happen. Now, when it was here on the floor, in her most negative imagination, she could not imagine herself falling. She sees herself very comfortably going right across it, picking up the $100 bill and coming back. Yeah, when it's up there, she sees failure. Let me ask you this. How do you see yourself health-wise? Do you see yourself as a dynamic, healthy, vibrant individual? How do you see yourself family-wise? As a loving husband or wife or parent? How do you see yourself business-wise? As an understanding, exciting, enthusiastic example? that not only tells and sells but lives what you teach? You tell me how you see yourself, and I'll tell you how you'll be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. That's been another thing that's impressed me as I listen to Al up here this morning, as I listen to all the speakers, is that you not only talk, but you live integrity. You live honesty. You live giving and getting in this company. And that's an exciting thing that I found in business, is that always delivering the maximum for what you receive always pays off in the long run. Always seeing yourself as a respected leader in your community brings about the respect that you see in yourself. Now, anytime in the future you find yourself being knotted up with anxiety and frustration and worry, here's what I urge you to do. Just stop yourself and say, hey, now wait a minute. Is that what I want to happen? And the likelihood is you're going to say, why, certainly not. That isn't what I want to happen. So immediately you say to yourself, what is it I want to happen? And immediately you capture in your mind a vivid image of what you want to happen, and therefore you begin to feel good right then, don't you? And you begin to propel yourself toward the realization of it. See, people have a tendency to say, I feel bad or I feel good, don't they? If you hurt people, you hear them every day saying, well, I don't feel very good. I feel bad. Now start remembering this. Anytime you say, I feel bad, say, uh-oh, cancel, cancel. What I mean is, I'm thinking bad. Thinking bad. See, what we think is what goes to the gut that makes us feel. So what you do is you upgrade your thinking, therefore you upgrade your feeling and your actions, your habits and your character. That's the exciting thing that begins to happen here, and I'm going to show you precisely, exactly, not philosophy and not theory, how to make that happen. If there were a one exciting, enjoyable little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-step formula that would guarantee that you would have a better month this coming month than you had last month, that would guarantee beyond a doubt you'd have a healthier, happier, more enjoyable, prosperous year this coming year than you had last year, you would probably want to know how to do it, wouldn't you? Say yes. All right, let me show you how to do it. You know that every day life comes to you something like this. If Bob Harris, are you here? You done so good yesterday. I want you to see it. It still comes to you and says, hello there, Bob. Here's the menu for the day. It says this to you, Bill, Jim, Don, Al, every one of you. Here's life's daily menu. Now you get to choose which side of the menu you're going to take. Now you can have either a terrific, happy, enjoyable, productive day, or if you want to, it's going to be an uptight, frustrating, get out there and deal with those dodos today type day. You get to choose the side of the menu that you're going to have. Now, if you say, well, by golly, Ed, if I get to choose, I believe I'll take the terrific side of the menu. Let me show you how to absolutely guarantee that you're going to have a good day every day. What you do is you get up early. And a lot of folks say, oh, no, I didn't know it was going to be that hard. You bounce right out of that bed just as soon as that clock sounds. And if you wake up to an electronic rooster, I urge you to get you one of those little soft-toned chime, chirpy chirp, sounds like a loud cricket, you know, or get you an all-FM music radio station so that you can wake up to something soft and pleasant rather than a loud clang, clang, clang like a shovel beating on a dishpan fire alarm and bang, 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 brings you out of bed mad. So, and just as soon as that sounds, right then, you just reach around, grab yourself by the neck, and jerk yourself right out of that bed. Don't lay there in bed. You get right out of that bed, and the very first thing you do is you read something inspirational. And I don't mean the newspaper. I mean you pick up something like The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, or something like Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, or Stand Up, Speak Out and Win by Ed Foreman, or a lot of other good books that are on the market today. And a lot of people say, well, the first thing I do whenever I get up in the morning is I go running in there to the toilet. Well, fine, take a good book in there with you and start reading it. Because if you don't, you know what you're going to be doing? You're going to be sitting in there thinking, oh, no, I got to do this. Oh, no, I got to do that. Aren't you? That's right. So immediately you start putting positive, uplifting thoughts in your mind. Have you ever noticed this? That whenever you first awaken in the morning, that if you hear a tune on the radio or you read a headline, you'll hum that tune all day long, or you'll think about that headline all day long? One of the things that we teach and talk about in our 3-day Successful Life course, and that we cover in our Laughing, Loving, and Living Your Way to the Good Life 8-hour, 8-cassette tape album, is that when you first awaken in the morning, you are at the alpha level of your subconscious mind, at about 10.5 brainwave cycles per second. Whatever you see, think, or hear during the next few minutes, about 10 to 15, maybe a maximum of 20 minutes, during that time is going to go into your subconscious mind and begins to program you through the day. So if you will read immediately positive motivational uplifting material or a positive motivational uplifting, listen to a good tape. And as you begin to put that information into your mind, it begins to program you more positively during that first 10 to 15 minutes. Then what you do is you slip on some comfortable clothes and you go out and you watch the world begin to wake up to a new day. And a lot of people say, well, supposing it's dark, supposing it's raining. We've never had the booger man get anybody in the dark. We've never had anybody melt in the rain. You just go out there and you watch the world begin to wake up to a new day, and you give thanks to God for all the many wonderful blessings that you have to be thankful for. You just say, thank you, Lord, for 2 good eyes with which to see. And for 60 seconds, just observe all of the things that you can see with your eyes in 60 seconds. There was a magnificent sight as I went out early this morning. Over across the way here, down to the freeway and across and on to the edge of the lake. For just a little while, the sun shone this morning as it was trying to come up. What a beautiful, magnificent morning it was. And I said, thank you, Lord, for this kind of sight. Say thank you, Lord, for 2 good ears with which to hear. And for 60 seconds, so many different things you can hear. You'll normally hear a plane in a far-off distance. You'll hear a train. You'll probably hear a barking dog. You'll hear the leaves as they rustle in the breeze. Thank you, Lord, for a strong, healthy, dynamic, vigorous body. And I know how some of you are feeling right now. You're saying, oh, come on now, Ed, you've stopped teaching and you've started preaching. No. Have you ever noticed this? Have you ever noticed that those folks who are grateful and thankful and appreciative normally have more to be grateful and thankful and appreciative for? They enjoy a better standard of living. They live in a better home. They drive a better automobile. They just enjoy more of the finer things of life, don't they? And have you ever noticed this, that those people who are always griping and moaning and complaining seem to have more to gripe and moan and complain about? Yeah. Seems like the good Lord says, well, you're always bitching. Let's see you get over this one. Let's see you get over that one. It just seems like they got more to gripe about, don't it? And that's precisely what we're talking about here, is that what you emphasize begins to multiply. If you had 2 children, and no matter what you did for one child, that child said to you, oh, Mom, oh, Dad, thank you so much. That's so wonderful. I'm going to put it to use, and I'm going to do this and this and this. And the other child, no matter what you did for that child, they said, oh, no, I wanted one of these. Why can't I have, everybody else got one of these. Why can't I have a new one? Which one would you have the tendency to do the most for? The happy, grateful, appreciative one, wasn't it? And that's just the way our Father in heaven treats us. When we give positive affirmations through ourselves to Him, then we find that they begin to multiply. That's the exciting thing that begins to happen. And after you've done that positive affirmation, you come back in from that walk, and you do a few stretching exercises to keep that body strong and healthy and dynamic. As I told you a while ago, we have 4 medical doctors, 2 outstanding clinical chiropractors who work with us in our program who designed a 12-minute-a-day, 12-exercise program, whereby you keep that stomach flat, you keep that body strong and healthy. It's covered on one of the tapes in that 8-tape album that I talked to you about there a while ago. You go through that exercise program. Only don't make it a long, boring program. Just 12 minutes, 1 exercise per minute, and you go through that. And then after you go through that exercise program of just basic stretching program, keeping those muscles feeling good and loose, then you take a shower. And after you take a shower, you have some breakfast. And a lot of people say, well, I don't eat any breakfast. Your mother told you the most important meal for you to have every day is to have a good breakfast, didn't she? And I don't care if it's just a nice big bowl of whole grain cereal, some whole wheat toast, a glass of juice, and a glass of milk, and a cup of coffee, is you give yourself the protein to convert to energy to give you the strength to perform through the day. In fact, a great rule to follow on eating and drinking your way to good health, and we cover this also in our program and in those tapes, is that you have breakfast like a king. If you're going to have a big meal during the day, it ought to be breakfast time. If you want to, you can have a little lean broiled piece of meat. Have an egg or 2, have some whole wheat toast, juice, milk, coffee. And therefore, that gives you the energy in the tank to propel the machine through the day. You're breaking the fast of that 6 to 8 hours that you have been resting and retiring. And so therefore, you have breakfast and you fill yourself up with a breakfast like a king. And then what you do is you have lunch like a prince. Now, I know I don't have to say this to this group, but many times in the Northeast, in the Boston, Philadelphia, and New York financial circles, I tell them the story about one of my good friends in Dallas who has 3 banks, and he put a notice on his bulletin board, and he said, well, those loan officers who feel like they must have a cocktail or 2 or 3 at lunch, please drink scotch or whiskey instead of gin or vodka, so our customers will think you're drunk instead of stupid. So what I say to you is don't drink lunch. You just have a nice, moderate lunch, like a prince. Don't overload yourself where you're sluggish and run down. And then when you come in this evening, you have supper like a pauper. That is, you have a nice big tossed salad or maybe a bowl of cereal or some cornbread and milk or something. When you don't need a lot of food to sustain you through that rest in the evening, you just take on a light meal. But what do many of us do? We reverse that cycle completely, don't we? We bounce up late, on the run in the morning, run in there, grab a cup of coffee, a greasy donut, and a cigarette, don't we? Gives us a high blood sugar count for about an hour and 15 minutes, and then bam, down we go, don't we? Feet up in the air. Go running in there to the coffee pot, grab yourself a cup of coffee, put a couple of spoons of sugar in it, get it down as fast as you can so you can get that blood sugar back up. Or gals, you grab yourself a Coca-Cola, don't you? Do you know that a 12-ounce Coca-Cola has the equivalent of 7 spoons of sugar in it? And it just begins to add on that old icky, gooey syrup going into it. And we're trying to keep that blood sugar up. And here we are on the run. And what do you do at lunch? You'll grab a hot dog or a cold bologna sandwich on the run, a couple more cups of coffee or a couple of Coca-Colas, don't you? Getting so much of that down, you start getting the Arbuckle lumps, you know, just getting like that, you know. And here you are on the run. And this evening you finally get in and you go in and you say, oh, hon, I'm just whipped. Pop me a cool one. And so you'll have 2 or 3 cocktails or 4 more, you know, get yourself about half mesmerized. The world kind of starts going around a little bit slower, you know. And then in comes that supper. I mean a big old prime rib with fat marbled all the way through it. Big old pile of mashed potatoes and greasy gravy poured down over the top of it. Big old pile of butter beans, big old white roll with butter all over the top of it. You say, oh, hon, you just outdone yourself here this evening. And you start plowing your way through that big pile of stuff sitting in front of you. And just about the time you get through, you say, oh, hon, my favorite pie a la mode with caramel syrup all over the top of it. I don't know if I can eat all of it or not. But you try, don't you? Chomp, chomp, burp, chomp, chomp. Finally get it all down, you get up and you go, ooh, brr. Boy, I really ate too much tonight. And what do? You go waddling in there to the TV room, don't you? Sit down in there, you turn on the TV and you say, hey, Beverly, where's them popcorn balls and peanuts? Isn't that right? For another 30 minutes to an hour, there you are, munchy, crunchy, stuff in your face. Full as you can. Just like a stuffed pig ready for the spit, you know. You finally get up and you say, oh, boy, I overdone it tonight. I'm going to have trouble sleeping. There you go, consciously programming your subconscious mind that you're going to have trouble sleeping. You go in there and get in that bed, and what do? You start burping, don't you? You start doing other things too, don't you? Give him the elbow, he deserves it, that's right. All right, and you roll and you toss during the night, don't you? Yeah, you have the sweats during the night. You have nightmares. And then you get up the next morning and you say, boy, I feel lousy. No wonder you feel lousy. Your body's been working overtime all night trying to digest that load of garbage you got on you this morning. You don't want to eat anything, so what do? On the run, you run in, grab yourself a hot cup of coffee, greasy donut, and a cigarette, and start the cycle all over again. What we say is you try it for 7 days. Reverse the cycle, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and supper like a pauper. I don't mean to step on anybody's toes, but our doctor says as a general rule, most overweight people do not eat breakfast. As a rule, if they do eat any, it's very little breakfast. They hardly eat anything during the day, and they say, I don't know why I gain weight, I just eat 1 meal a day. But what do? From 6 o'clock to bedtime, they're clomping that meal on, ain't they? It's just like a wheelbarrow load. They start loading on all the way to the bed. And here's what happens. This is not the medical terminology that they use. But they say what happens is we've been starving ourselves all these time. We start taking that food on at 6 o'clock just before bedtime and all the way to bedtime. And the enzymes down in here say, hey, gang, here comes some food. Better store all you can. No telling when we'll get any more. And so it starts storing it on as fat, and we store more and we're going to burn off the next day. And it just starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I know. I'm telling you what has happened to me. Do you know that 3 years ago I weighed 238 pounds? It was all I could do to run up 3 flights of stairs. I mean, I thought the big one was coming on whenever I got up there, you know. I started following the simple little program that we talk about in that 8-tape album, Laughing, Loving, Living Your Way, The Good Life, doing the things with eating foods breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, supper like a pauper, and doing the 12-minute-a-day exercises, and in less than a year I was down to 190 pounds, the same as I weighed whenever I played college football. The exciting thing about it is that, you know, it's just little things. I used to, anytime I got feeling a little low, what I'd do, I'd run grab a Coca-Cola and a package of M&Ms. I said that'd give me energy, you know, it perked me up. I became an M&M-aholic. I mean, I had them hidden in the glove compartment of my car. Anybody say no to me, I'd run grab a package of M&Ms, you know, chug a lug of Coke, you know. You know how you didn't want to get yourself hurt. I had them in my desk drawer. Kids would come in, they'd sneak in there and steal them out of my desk drawer, you know. The worst came whenever I started hiding some in the cabinet in the bathroom. I mean, that was really, I knew I would gone beyond. But do you know, I don't even like M&Ms anymore. I don't like chocolates, don't like Coke. And it takes you about 7 days to begin to get yourself programmed. If you want an in-between meal snack, have an orange, have an apple, have some kind of fructose pick up so that you're not putting on that sugar storage. Now, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent on that, but I think it'll be one of the most exciting things that'll help you begin to feel better. If you feel better, then you think better, you feel better, and you begin to perform and do better. All right, now then, once you finish that good breakfast, and that's what got us off on that tangent, you take a leisurely drive to work. Now, the reason you can take a leisurely drive to work is because you don't have to get in that 13-minute late rat race. You got up early. And whenever you get down there to the office, you go and put a smile on your face. Act like you're happy to be alive. They say, whoo, boy, that Bob feels good today. Woo, that Jim feels good today. That John, so everybody else feels good, don't they? And that feeling goes throughout the entire organization. And then in comes that sore head, and he says, John, I thought you said you're going to get this done, you're going to do this, and then you're like a big old hot air balloon going like that. You said, now wait a minute. When did you call in about that? Who'd you talk to? Where'd you want it delivered? You go through the 6 honest serving men at Clear Communications, and that's an even more exciting station than this. I got some really good ones I'd like to share with you, but I don't have time. Here's one we're going to tell you. You go through the when, where, who. I hope I get to come back. I'll give you one that's even gooder than this, and it'll even mean more. But what you do is you go through the when, where, who, what, how, and why. And pretty soon, all the hot air's escapement is hanging their lamp like that, ain't it? And they go out there and they say, you know what, John ain't half bad. But who was the real winner in that situation? It was John, wasn't it? Because he did not let that situation control him. He raised that situation to his positive creative level. And that's what positive thinking is all about. It's not thinking that you just look at the world through rose-colored glasses, that everything's always going to go your way. You're going to run into some tough difficulties, but don't let them pull you down into the gutter with them. You pick them up to your creative, positive level and make things happen the way you want to. And then instead of work till you're about to drop over like a dead dog, you stop there today and you take a mind control relaxation from the tip of your toes to the top of your head. You just relax and let go of all tension and tightness and just replenish your body with energy. One of the tapes that we have in that album is called the MCR, Mind Control Relaxation, where we show you in 15 minutes how to get the equivalent of a 2-hour relaxing nap. And even if you have to go get in your automobile out in the parking lot to do it, even if you have to hide in a supply closet and lock the door, you take that mind control relaxation. Even if you have to go to the restroom and close yourself in there in that room, that's the last choice place, but at least that's one place you could go. You relax and let go for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then this evening you take a leisurely drive home, and whenever you get in, your sweetheart is going to say to you, honey, what kind of a day did you have? And you're going to say, honey, I had a terrific day because you deliberately chose that side of the menu and you made it happen. Now let me show you how you can actually, there wouldn't be a person in this room that would choose the other side of the menu, but let me show you how better than half of the people out there in the real world make the terrible side of the menu their day every day. What you do is you get up late. You know, when the clock sounds, you say, oh no, gosh, is it time to get up already? And you throw a little tantrum right then, you know. I never did like daylight savings time anyhow. And then when the first news alarm goes off, you hit at it and you knock the clock off of the table. You jump up, you go running into the toilet, and you stump your toe on the way into the toilet. And there you are in there shaving just fast as you can. Sneak yourself shaving. Put a little piece of toilet paper on there to keep them bleeding to death, you know. Then sneak yourself again, put another piece of toilet paper on there. First thing you know, your face looks like a cotton patch. A little piece of toilet paper stuck all over it, you know. Or girls, you're putting your makeup on and your finger slips, goes right in your eye, and tears start running down. You make a little ravine right down through your makeup, you know. And here you are, got yourself off to that bad kind of a start. You don't have time to read anything inspirational. But on the way into the kitchen, you scoop up the morning newspaper so you can memorize the front page. Read about all the murders, wars, and rapes that happened the night before, you know. Get all that bad news working in your head. You go running in there to the kitchen, and your sweetheart has you a hot cup of coffee poured, and you go to drink, and you go, yeah! What are you doing? Trying to scald me? You know the saucer and blow this stuff. I'm in a hurry.
and you get into a good argument with her or him while you're pouring that hot acid down into your stomach, got all that bad news working in your head, and you reach over there and you pick up a cigarette and you light it and you start sucking that smoke down in there with that hot acid into that empty stomach so you can go, you know, get that film right off the bottom of your gut, you know. In fact, I don't know why you don't just run out there in the driveway and kneel down behind your car and put your lips right over the tailpipe and just start sucking that right into your lungs. And a lot of people say, but I smoke to relax. Well, that'll relax you. It's just a little bit faster than putting a bunch of dried up leaves and a piece of paper, spitting on it, rolling it up, and setting one end on fire and sucking the carbon monoxide through there. But what we do, we get all that working in our guts, you know, get all that going, look at our watch and say, yep, 13 minutes late, just like always. Go running out there, jump in the car, and yeah, that driver, oh, look out, world, here he comes. Like a 5,000-pound semi-guided missile headed down that highway. You get down there that first traffic light, and there's some dodo sitting through a green light. You sit down on that horn, you say, move on, stupid! He says, shut up, fat mouth! And he catches you right there in a red light. But here's something you learn to do. If you'll sit there and race your engine, it'll make that light change faster. In fact, you found out that if you'll race your engine and double your fist up and wave it at him and mumble obscenities at the same time, it'll make that light change. It was something about your technical training background, you know. And sure enough, you change your light and go through about 3 of those, finally get out of the office, go in, they say, good morning, John. You go, yeah! And they say, boy, he like a bad breath tiger this morning. Better watch out for him. He'll snap one off of you, you know. And that feeling goes throughout the entire organization. And then in comes that story, and he said, John, I thought you said you're going to get this contract ready, you're going to do this and this and this and this, just like a big old hot air balloon going, you say, wait just one doggone minute, buddy. Let me tell you a thing or two. That's like reaching up there, grabbing his balloon and going, pow, and hot air and spit goes all over everybody. He goes out there telling everybody what a no-good scoundrel John is, and John works till he about to fall over like a dead dog with his feet sticking up in the air. And finally, about 6:30, 7 o'clock this evening, you get out your briefcase, commonly referred to in our program as a monkey cage, and that's one of the things that we show you how to keep the monkey off your back. But you start unloading those stinking, squeaking monkeys off your back. Put them in that briefcase so you can take them home, tell your wife how overworked and underpaid you are, how rough life is. Nobody just realized what the business world is today and all the fight we have, you know. In fact, not too long ago, a fellow said he got into where he was taking a big fat briefcase full of work home with him every night. Said his little 6-year-old daughter was talking to her mother, and she said, Mommy, she said, why is it that Daddy doesn't have time to visit with me and talk to me after supper like he used to? She said, well, sweetheart, said, you know, your father just got a promotion. He's got a very important job down at the office now, and he's got so much to do during the day. He can't get it all done, and he has to bring it home and worry and work with it here after supper at night. And the little 6-year-old first grader said, Mommy, why don't they put him in a slower group? Now, if you're getting into the habit of taking a great big fat stinking briefcase full of monkeys home with you every night, you might take a lesson with that. But what we have a tendency to do, we throw that in the back seat of the car, get down to the first traffic light, and there's that same dodo you followed to work this morning. You go through about 3 lights, you finally get home, and your sweetheart says to you, John, what kind of a day did you have today? And you tell her. And it gets worse from there on. Now, given that kind of a choice, which side of the menu would you take? Which side would you take, John? Yeah, he says he'd take the terrific side. Now, if I went around here today and I asked each one of you to stand and publicly identify the side of the menu that you'd take, chances are every single one of you in here would say, well, of course, Ed, I'd take the terrific side. Any intelligent person would. But do you know that better than half of the people out there in the real world, full well knowing that if they get up late, grab a cup of coffee, a greasy donut, and a cigarette on the run, they're going to have a bad day. They do it day after day after day after day because they've developed the habit of doing it. You know the type I'm talking about. They say, I don't get ulcers, I give them mothers. You know the type. Now, if there were a way that every person that you would meet could help you be reminded of this little daily menu, and therefore choose and have a good day every day, you'd want to know how to do it, wouldn't you? Say yes. All right, people come up to you and they say to you, good morning, how are you? And what's the normal sidewalk response to that common everyday question? That's right, fine, how are you? We got two recordings in us. One of them says, good morning, how are you? And the other says, fine, how are you? Heard it all up and down the halls out here this morning, you know. You see a guy walking along, he says, my wife died last night, and the other says, fine, how are you, you know. They don't pay a bit of attention in the world to you. Now, I'm not talking about that 50% below. You say, good morning, how are you? And they say, woo, man, I got one of them old Southern Comfort headaches this morning. Or old ruptures poking out. Let me show you how bad it is here. I'm not talking about that 50% below that start unloading about how bad they feel. I'm talking about that 50% above that say, fine, how are you? From now on, anytime, anywhere, anybody says to you, good morning, how are you? Good afternoon, how are you? Good day, how are you? You're just going to automatically see that they're holding this menu right up in front of them, right on their forehead, just like this. And they're saying, good morning, which side of the menu will you take? And you're going to respond with one single word. And the word is terrific. Terrific. And a lot of people say to me, oh, come on now, Ed. You mean to tell me that little cheerleading cliche is going to help me have a good day? That is precisely what I mean. And let me tell you the psychology and explain it to you, the psychology behind this. You see, your conscious mind is like the captain on the bridge of a ship. The captain looks out across the horizon and he says, all clear, full steam ahead. And the men down in the engine room sock the power to it and it's full steam ahead. They never do say, I wonder if the captain's got a hangover. Maybe it ought to be about 30 degrees to left and about half steam. They automatically implement the orders that are called to it from the bridge. And so does your subconscious mind begin to implement the orders that you consciously give it when you awaken every morning. If you get up in the morning and you say, aha, what a beautiful morning. Look at that magnificent sunrise. Smell the crispness of the morning air. It just begins to program you for that kind of a positive good day. If you get up in the morning and you say, boy, it's going to be a tough booger today. It says, fine, stump toe on way to toilet. Nick self-shaving, burn self with coffee, have dummy, stop in front of green light. It just begins to program you for that kind of a day. And a lot of people say to him, oh, come on now, Ed. You mean to tell me that you feel terrific every single day? Why, certainly not. But I always tell myself I do. And pretty soon, I do. That's the exciting thing that I'm talking about here. It's the as-if principle. You act as if you're happy. You act as if you're healthy. You act as if you're successful, and pretty soon you begin to become that way. Not too long ago, I had a business executive, one of the major leaders of one company that we'd been doing some work for, and he said, now come on, Foreman. He said, if I'm not sincerely feeling happy and enthusiastic, I'm not going to put on a false front and act like I'm happy and enthusiastic. And I said to him, I'd 10 to 1 rather have someone around me that was acting like they were happy and enthusiastic than a sincere sorehead any day. Wouldn't you? Of course you would. Now, if you don't like the word act, use the word practice. Practice being happy. Practice being healthy. Practice being successful, and the first thing you know, you begin to become that way. And sometimes people say to me, well, supposing you didn't get in until midnight last night. You couldn't find a rental car, you couldn't find a taxi, you finally took a bus, and that was one of the locals, and it stopped all the way in. You didn't get into the hotel here till 3 o'clock this morning. They had all the rooms rented up. You had to walk 7 blocks down the street. You didn't get to bed till 4 o'clock this morning. And at 6:30 this morning, Al called you, and he said to you, good morning, Ed, how are you? You mean to tell me honestly and sincerely now, you would respond with the word terrific? I said, I mean, if you have to put your fingers on your lips and say, terrific. You do it. Because the men down in the engine room can't see what the captain's having to do up here. Now, admittedly, the first time you may have to say, terrific. But the second time you can probably say, terrific, without the use of your finger. And then the next time, terrific, and the more you say it, the more you begin to feel it. That's the exciting thing I'm talking about. Not too long ago, we were working with several petrochemical companies and different organizations. And purchasing agent for one of the major companies I work for. He said, you know, Ed, I'd give anything in the world if I could feel as enthusiastically, dynamically, vibrantly alive as you seem to feel every day. And I said, I'll tell you what you do, Bill. I said, you take one of these little daily menus for laughing, loving, and living your way to the good life. I have, incidentally, a copy for every single one of you to take a copy of this home with you tonight to begin to practice it. And I said, here's what you do. I said, tonight, before you go to bed, you read it from cover to cover. It has a little happy face in it, a little sad face. You read it, you think about what it says, take about 8 to 10 minutes, and tomorrow morning, the very first thing, whenever you get up, you read it from cover to cover and think about what it says, and you do that. You read it for the next 30 days, every morning and every night, and every time somebody says to you, good morning or good afternoon, how are you, respond with the word terrific. What will happen is at the end of 30 days, you will have developed the habit of responding that way, whether you feel that way or not. How many of you in here, if you felt by taking a copy of this little daily menu, and for just the next 30 days, you would read it, you'd follow it, you'd implement it, it would help you? Would you raise your hands? Well, congratulations. That looks like all the way around the room. He said, you know, Ed, if that's what it takes, that's what it'll do. Now remember, take it and read it tonight and think about it before you go to bed. Tomorrow morning, very first thing, whenever you get up, you read. Yeah, even if you go running in there to the toilet, you take this in there with you and you read it. Now remember, use it only for reading purposes. Now, you read it, and you think about it and you apply it, I guarantee you what you'll do is you'll develop the habit of responding that way. Well, I didn't see him for about 3 months, and I saw him one day, and he had this smile on his face from ear to ear. I mean, he was just beaming all over, and I said, well, tell me how it's working. He said, let me tell you what happened. He said, for 45 days, Ed, he said, I read and followed that little daily menu every night and every morning. He said, I listened to the Laughing, Loving, Living Your Way of the Good Life cassette album. He said, I read the book, Stand Up to Me. He said, I did everything. He said, every time somebody said to me, good morning, good afternoon, how are you, I responded with the word terrific. But he said, what happened on the 45th night, our electricity went off, and he said, the next morning, our clock didn't awaken me. He said, I woke up at 8:30. I looked at my watch, jumped out of bed, stumped my toe on the way to the toilet, nicked myself shaving. He said, almost exactly the way you explained on the bad side of me. Said I had to change shirts 3 times because I'd bled down, ruined the collar on 2 shirts. Said I went running into the kitchen, and bless my dear little wife's heart, she had poured me a hot cup of coffee in a tin cup so I could take it to work with me. And I went to drinking, and I just stuck to my bottom lip and just peeled the skin right off of it. He said I went running out, jumped in the car, got down to the first traffic light, and there was that dodo sitting through a green light. Said I went to change hands with that coffee to honk and holler at him, and I spilled that coffee right down my fly. And he said it's just as hot as it was when it peeled the skin off my lip. He said I finally got to the office, I went running in there and said the telephone was ringing off my desk. And said it was this cantankerous engineer out in our production department calling in. And he said to me, good morning, Bill, how are you? And I said, terrific! And he said, well, you sure don't sound terrific. And he said, well, I am terrific. And he said, I started laughing. Because he said, right then and there, I recognized that I had indeed developed the habit of responding that way, whether I felt that way or not. And at 10:15 in the morning, I turned the day around into what was going to be one of the most gosh-awful, bad, terrible days I'd ever had into an exciting, enjoyable, productive, successful, terrific day because I had developed the habit of doing it. And that's exactly what I'm talking to you about, is that the more you do this, the more you apply it, the better you're going to feel. Now, I know I've talked too long now. You've been a wonderful, magnificent group. You've helped me bring out a better feeling in myself, and I hope that I've helped you do the same. The thing that I'm going to do right now is I'm going to end this session with a little test. It's a one-question test that requires a one-word answer. If you get it right, we're going to move on to the closing session of this program. Nobody ever flunks one of Ed Foreman's classes. We always make sure. All right, now here's the question. Good morning, group. How are you? Hey, that is good. I believe that's about the best first-time response we've ever had. I notice if 4 or 5 of you out there may need to use your fingers. If you do, go ahead, because we're not taking down names. Now this time, everybody knows what the answer to the test question is, and we want everybody to get 100 on this test. So now this time, whenever I ask you, I mean just let it come from way down deep. I mean just beller it out with all the power you got. Let them hear us clear down there at the registration desk. All right, everybody ready? Good morning, group. How are ya? Hey, that's a lot better. All right, now then, this time, what you're going to do, uncross your legs, empty your laps, all of you right back there at the back, everywhere. This time, what you're going to do, you're going to come up out of those chairs, you're going to play like they're spring-loaded, you're going to try to sock your fist right through the ceiling. Watch out for that center chandelier down there. You're going to come right up, you're going to shout just as loud and as strong and as powerfully as you can. And if there's anybody sitting there saying, he thinks I'm going to do that, he's crazy, then you got another thought coming, because this ain't show and tell. Everybody does it, or we're going to stay right here in this room and practice on it until you all get it down. All right, everybody ready? Good morning, group. How are ya? Hey, all right. You go out of here dedicated to that kind of spirit, and you're not only going to have a good day, you're going to have a good week, a good month, and a successful, happy life. Thank you. God bless you. Be with you.
For additional information about Ed Foreman's Successful Life course and other cassette tapes and programs, you may call him in Dallas, Texas at area code 214-620-0172 or write to Suite 115, 2995 LBJ Freeway, Dallas, Texas 75234. This concludes Side B of this cassette. Remember